Prime 3D just had another huge update, which not only features a ton of new tools and improvements, but an entirely new painting mode, giving you a whole new way that you can use it. This might be Prime 3D's biggest public update yet, and in this video I'll go through all the things that are rolling out with it, so let's take a look. Prime 3D can already be used in a whole host of ways. You can use it to paint any 3D model in any colours you like, and then have that processed into coloured dither lines so you can print it using just cyan, magenta and yellow filaments. You can apply full gradients with any colours in any orientation to any part of any model you like, and apply full colour photos also just to be printed in CMY. You can use it as a standard painting tool, exporting finished pieces in block colours to be printed as a conventional multicolour print. And you can even import pre-painted models, including OBJs with UV maps, edit them if you like, and convert them to a slicer suitable 3MF, either to be printed as block colours or with coloured dither lines and CMY. But version 0.9.6.11 introduces a whole new way to paint and process your models, and we'll get into that in just a second. But first, I wanted to quickly cover a major improvement in the CMY system. When processing projects to have coloured dither lines for printing in CMY, with the optional inclusion of white and/or black filament, it assumes that you're using pure cyan, magenta and yellow. But often the filaments that you have are not those exact colours, and as a result, the calculations that Prime 3D makes to create the painted colour by mixing those filaments won't be 100% accurate. So if we process this model here and then import it into our slicer, you can see that each of the assigned colours are pure cyan, magenta and yellow. My magenta and yellow are fairly close to these colours, but my cyan is completely different. Pure cyan has a colour hex code of 00FFFF, but there are many variants, and Bambu Labs cyan PLA is 0086D6. If I now assign the cyan parts of this model to the actual colour of my filament, you'll see that this strongly shifts the colour of the model, giving a more purple hue. For the past few versions of Prime 3D, you've been able to enter the colour hex codes of your filaments, but this has only been used to adjust the colour codes on export, so you don't need to then reassign the colours when you import into your slicer. However, I've finally got it working as was always intended, and now the hex codes that you enter here are taken into account when processing, so the distribution of the colours in those layered dither lines will be adjusted to compensate for the slight CMY variance in your filaments. Helpfully, Bambu Lab has a PDF on their PLA store page which lists the hex codes of each of the PLA filaments. So if I update my value here, then reprocess it and import that into Bambu Studio, along with the one processed with the default colours, we can see that the colours are a lot more accurate when both of them have my filaments assigned. When you set custom hex codes in Prime 3D, it will display this banner saying using custom colours on the main toolbar. These colours are remembered across uses on the same computer, providing you don't clear your browser's cache. But this banner can be an easy confirmation that custom filament colours are still in use. So that helps us get better results with the existing CMY painting system, but I'm sure that you want to hear more about this brand new painting mode. Underneath the Orient and Scale buttons at the top of the toolbar, you'll see we now have a painting mode section which we can open up. If we open that up, there are two modes. Standard mode basically encapsulates all of the painting modes you may already be familiar with Prime 3D. This allows you to paint the model however you like with absolutely any colour, then process it either to be printed in CMYKW dither lines or using the solid colour filament mode to be printed with conventional multicolour printing, each colour having its own filament. Custom blend mode, however, doesn't assume that you're using CMYKW filaments, nor is it intended for converting pre-painted models. If we switch over to it, you'll see that currently, switching paint mode will remove any painting that you've applied to your model, but I am planning on adding a colour conversion option in the future. Rather than giving you free rein to paint with absolutely any color with the aim of then creating those colors by blending cyan, magenta, and yellow filaments, custom blend mode allows you to add the actual filaments that you have and that you want to print with. First of all, you can add how many filaments you plan to print with. Then, if you know the hex code for the colors of your filaments, you can enter that here. Otherwise, you can select an approximation of their colors right here. Alternatively, if you open up a photo or the store listing for your filaments in another window, then select the eyedropper, you can just select the color displayed in the picture. Then you can select which of these is the base color for the model, effectively which color it will be in any area that you haven't directly painted with the tools below. Now I can use the brush, sphere, and fill painting tools and paint on the object with any of the filaments that I've set. But not only can I paint areas with those specific colors, I can also switch to blend mode. In here, I can select any two of the filaments and adjust what percentage of each of those two filaments is used in a custom mix to create a new color. Here we have the preview of the color it will create. With both bars all the way to the right, that will be a 50-50 mix of each color. Anywhere else on those bars will affect the percentage use of both colors. Below that preview is a button called Open Blend Palette. If you click that, it will show you a list of suggested colors that can be achieved by mixing any of your filaments at different ratios. If you click one of these, it will preset the color and the percentages for you. You can optionally add a third color to the mix if you wish, giving even more flexibility on the colors you can create. Currently, suggested blends aren't available for 3 color variants, and we're going to stick to just using 2 colors for now. Once you've created the color you want, you can then paint that color onto the model using any of these painting tools. Now, as we're exclusively using filaments that we actually have, currently this benchy is mostly red. Specifically, it's the exact red of our filament. Any parts of the model painted in your filament colors will be printed as solid colors without any dither lines. Any areas created using a color blend will be painted using dither lines of your chosen filaments. Not only can you blend colors for the brush, sphere, and fill tool, but you can also apply gradients to any part of your model in any orientation using any 2 of your chosen filaments. So just as with the gradient tool in standard paint mode, you can either apply the gradient to the entire model, selecting rotation, pitch, amount of steps, and the center point, or you can switch to selection mode. Here you can use the brush or fill tools to select just an area of the model, then select 2 points that you want the gradient to run between and apply it just to that selected area. This quickly brings me to another one of the improvements in this update. Previously, you could only select the center point of the gradient if you were applying it to the whole model. But now you also have a slider to choose the center point for selection gradients as well, which you can see in the preview bar above. With that all set, you can apply your gradient. And again, only the gradient or blended colors will be printed with dither lines. The rest will be printed in solid colors. You may have seen that the photo projection tool isn't shown here. Currently, the photo projection tool isn't available in the custom blend painting mode. However, I do plan to integrate it in the future, giving a similar effect to how currently in standard painting mode, you can project a photo on your model, then simplify the colors. It can produce a pretty effective version of your photo that can then be exported and printed in block colors with a conventional multicolor print. Please note that, for now at least, if you do use any color blending or gradients when using the color blend mode, this will still require the entire model to be printed in the layer height you choose when processing, either 0.08mm or 0.06mm to ensure that the blend lines align with the layer lines. There's a lot still to get through, but I just wanted to quickly mention that I develop and release Prime 3D into the community for free in the hopes that people will find it interesting and useful, and also that it may help or inspire further innovation in the field. If you are finding this interesting or useful, please do pop a like and a hype on the video. It's always hugely appreciated, and subscribe so you don't miss out on the future updates. Whilst Prime 3D is and always will be available for free, there is also a closed beta available, giving access to completely new features and updates weeks or even longer before it rolls out into the public version. My Patreon supporters and YouTube channel members of certain tiers always have access to the latest beta build. If you'd like to join them, getting that and also early access to my videos, member exclusive content, access to the 3D Revolution Discord community and more, head to my Patreon via the link in the description or hit join below any of my videos. Whether you choose to support me with a membership or just a like on the video, thank you. Alright, let's carry on with this update. Back in standard painting mode, let's look at some of the other improvements this update offers. Now, as you may have noticed, the colour picker has disappeared from the paint tools. This was always a clunky implementation. You now have two options. There is now an eyedropper located to the right of the colour hexcode box. You can select this to pick an existing colour already painted on your model without having to deselect a painting tool. Alternatively, there is now a second colour picker. Now, if you click the colour preview box, it will bring up a secondary palette, the same as you've always had available when selecting the base colour. This allows you to select your colour via RGB values, but it also features a colour picker. As you saw earlier, this colour picker is able to select not just any colour on the page, but it can select any colour on your screen, even from outside of the browser, allowing you to pick colours from your desktop wallpaper or a photo that you've got open next to it. Down in the Process and Export section, the Colour Cleaners dropdown has been renamed to Colour Adjustments. We had the Vivid Colour option added a few versions ago, but up until now it's only been available if you had a filament mode selected that uses black or white filaments. Vivid Colour Processing is now available in CMY filament mode. With this ticked, not only does it reduce white and black usage in chromatic areas, but it also reduces the use of trace colours. So if, for example, a colour dither has included magenta, but is such a low percentage that it only includes it every few millimeters, this can result in random stripes running across the model. The Vivid Colour box will remove these bands from the mix and give you a much cleaner result. And this brings me to the bug fixes, and there was a big one to squash. A previous update introduced a glaring bug where if processed in CMY, regardless of the colours that you painted your model in, it could export with dither lines that produced an almost pure pink. So the previous public build gave us this Grogu when exported in CMY. But after the fix, that same project gives us this now. There was also an issue in previous versions where if you loaded a saved Prime 3D project file, the undo redo buttons, navigation control key, and paint color palette would often not load. I'm happy to say that this has been repaired now. Some people were also having an issue where they would process a project, then realise that something still needed changing, change it, then download their project without reprocessing, meaning those final changes weren't implemented. Prime 3D now requires you to reprocess a model before downloading if you change any setting or apply any painting that would affect the exported model. Finally, previously if you were working on a model, then decided to import a different model to work on, many of the settings in the previous project would be transferred to the newly imported model. This was a particularly frustrating bug, but Prime 3D now resets all settings other than those in the settings window when importing a new model. And that's all of the big changes in this Prime 3D update. As I mentioned earlier, in addition to getting early access to my videos, member exclusive content, access to the 3D Rev Discord community and more, my paid Patreon supporters and certain tiers of YouTube channel members also get access to the Prime 3D beta build. In addition to what we covered today, the latest beta build features a completely rebuilt underlying system, allowing for perfectly smooth painting on any surface with 10 times the precision of previous builds. It includes a range of new painting tools and some tweaks for experimental filament usage. If you'd like to give that a try, you can get all of that and more by heading to my Patreon via the link in the description, or by hitting join below any of my videos and selecting an applicable tier. If that doesn't tickle your fancy, a like, hype and subscribe would be hugely appreciated. A massive thank you to the community. Your support and suggestions keep me and projects like this going. If you do have any suggestions for Prime 3D or for my channel in general, please do let me know in the comments. Despite having a long and growing list of things that I'd like to improve and implement, it's always fantastic to hear from you, so keep them flowing. As always, thanks very much everyone, and until next time, happy printing. A huge thank you to my revolutionaries, my Patreon supporters and YouTube channel members. You guys are rock stars. I've got lots of new content on the way, but for now, why not chuck on one of my other videos to learn something new or just have some fun. Thanks very much everyone, and until next time, happy printing.